Brought to you by Penguin.
The World of the Cold War, 1945 to 1991, by Vladislav Zubok. Read by Rufus Wright. Introduction. An Unlearned History. The Cold War was like the Wagnerian cycle The Ring. It was massive and seemed to never end. I heard those words in London in 1998 from Jeremy Isaacs, director of the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden. Sir Jeremy was about to produce a milestone 24-part documentary film, Cold War, sponsored by CNN founder Ted Turner. I was a scholar from the former Soviet Union and one of the series' consultants, alongside historians John Lewis Gaddis and Lawrence Friedman. Everyone grappled with the magnitude of the task, but I was in a league of my own. While growing up and studying in the Soviet Union in the 1970s, I heard the term Cold War only rarely, and only in quotation marks, used in sentences like, the United States unleashed the so-called Cold War against the Soviet Union. In Moscow libraries, it was impossible to find a solid book on the subject. Those that existed were published in the West and were available only with special permissions. Much of what I learned about the Great Conflict, therefore, had been written by my Western colleagues. Once the Soviet archives became accessible after 1991, I devoted my time to studying and interpreting them. Much of the narrative from the Eastern perspective in this book is based on the new evidence that I and a few fellow historians discovered in those archives. But how to interpret this wealth of evidence? Communist ideology and censorship had collapsed, but among Russians there was no agreement on what had happened since the end of the Second World War. A few liberals believed that the entire confrontation with the West was caused by the aggressive communist regime. Many more believed that the Soviet Union was defeated and destroyed, perhaps by internal treason. There were even those who thought that the Cold War never truly ended. The West was still out to destroy Russia. A 4-decade-long conflict is not easy to synthesize. Indeed, the Cambridge history of the Cold War was published in 3 thick volumes. In this short book, I draw from my dual perspective of 3 decades in the USSR, followed by 3 decades in the West, to interrogate the key issues and developments of the war. We all live and write in space and time. As T.S. Eliot wrote, what is actual only for one time and only for one place. Had this book been written 10 years ago, it would have appeared as a record of dangerous but ancient times. Not so now. The world has become perilous again. The COVID-19 pandemic, the climate catastrophe, and the return of large-scale conflicts, the Russia-Ukraine war, and the growing sense that we are living through a new Cold War between the United States and China. Stability and peace are no longer the natural state of things. Diplomacy ceases to work, treaties are broken. International institutions, courts, and norms cannot prevent conflicts. Technology and internet communication do not automatically promote reason and compromise, but often breed hate, nationalism, and violence. Should we be surprised? There is something unchanging about human nature and conflicts. Exiled general and self-made historian Thucydides famously wrote in the 5th century BC that the war among the Greeks was the result of the rise of Athens and fear that this produced in Sparta. Fear, honor, and interest. For Thucydides, those qualities were natural and naturally contributed to the tensions between the Greeks. 25 centuries after Thucydides, French novelist Marcel Proust observed the naivete of those who expect wars to only erupt when countries are not satisfied with their borders and territories. War has countless causes. Seeing the other as an enemy, a need for moral superiority, ideological delusions, all of these contribute to conflicts between countries. Insecurity is an irrational feeling that tends to become paranoia. And conflict almost inevitably breeds the conviction that the only way to settle a dispute is through the force of arms, preemptive offensives, and persevering at any cost. People, of course, are not pre-programmed species with unchanging emotions and invariable reactions. They are products of their life experience. We read about wars of the past.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?